Hello, everyone. It's good to see everybody. I'm Bernadette Carpenter, and I'm the Innovation Lead here at KVEC. And
I'm Desi Bolin, and I'm the Associate Director here at KVEC. And we are glad to be here today to talk about access at home. And this was the first readiness question that we did on our survey. And so when you talk about access at home and looking at what the access at home includes, it includes both having a device and we're just getting ready here. So, access at home is actually built on a foundation of having access of devices and access to the internet. And so we have brought together a great panel to discuss how they're working to ensure that kids and teachers have really good remote learning experiences, and they'll share some ideas on what's going on in their districts, and hopefully we can learn from each other.
And we're going to let this panel introduce themselves. So, Mr. Meadows, if you'd like to go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Chris Meadows, principal at McGoffin County High School.
We also have Mr. Jeff Cochran. He's the District Innovation Coordinator in Johnson County. Mr. Mike Whitaker, he's the Data Communications Specialist in Johnson County. Nicole, are you on there? We have Miss Nicole Stanley. She's a parent, community, and business person from Pike County. And we have Miss Courtney DeRossett. She's our KETS field staff. Office of Educational Technology. We're really looking forward to hearing from these folks.
And what we wanted to do today was just to get our conversation going and have us thinking about moving forward with remote learning, where that we know that high quality, low cost digital access is critical in all of our rural communities. And one of the things, and that yesterday my little grandson had a ball game, and so as I was driving, I was listening to the radio, and they were doing an interview with our former commissioner, Wayne Lewis, as well as with some of our internet providers. And they were talking about something that really is concerning for us. And they said that more than 186,000 students in Kentucky do not have adequate devices at home, and that they lack reliable high-speed internet. And so that, as we move forward then, is quite concerning for schools, because also I'll share one other thing, and I thought it was really good. One of our colleagues gave us a book, and it had a quote in it, and it said, and it's something that goes along with what our leadership was talking about in the prior section, but that the pandemic teaching of the mid 2020 was not really distant learning, but rather crisis teaching. But starting now, teachers have the opportunity to prepare for distance learning with purpose and intent. And so that's what we really want to look at today and talk about as we move forward. How can we ensure that every student has access to a high quality device and good access to the internet?
So one of our first questions that we're going to be asking our panelists is, has there been conversation at your school or district to determine what percentage of your students have personal devices at home to use for remote learning? And what we'll do is we'll just start with Mr. Meadows, and then when he's finished, Mr. Cochran, you can pick up and go on, and then as well as Mike and Nicole and Courtney.
So yes, Bernadette, to answer your question, in McGoffin County, we have had that conversation. We started with that conversation earlier in the summer. And then as we progressed at each school level, of course, I'm at the high school, so I can speak more for the school than I can the district. But at each school, we have been in communication with our families regarding this actual question. And what we have found at the high school level is that we're roughly around 75%. We have found through our data collection that 75% of our student body has a device at home other than a phone. And we gathered this information primarily through a phone survey. We spent several days calling our families, but we also did a survey through a Google form. We had a small percentage of people participate in that, but most of them have been phone conversations. But 75% of the students have a device at McGoffin County High School other than a cell phone.
So you've talked to districts, I'm sure, out there, and the question is, has there been conversation at the schools and districts to determine the percentage of students that have personal devices at home to use for the remote learning? Have you talked to a lot of them to see if they've surveyed, and just give us some input on that?
I will, and right before I go into it, I was hoping, I see that Jeff and Mike have joined us from Johnson County, and I want them to share how they've been surveying their students, because it's been something that we've been working on too at the state level. So if you care to share, Jeff and Mike.
So we've been surveying all of our students through the Infinite Campus online enrollment, getting those numbers as far as devices and whether they have broadband at home.
Great.
And that's been one way. And, you know, I know there's a lot of statistics out there talking about the access for our kids in Kentucky, but I'm glad you asked that question, because as our leaders dive in and they create even their own surveys, I've heard of districts that they have actually had people calling individually to parents. And then now, as they talk about the online registration portal, where that question goes out to every home, to every family. So that data is so much more accurate than just something that maybe someone have ballparked or asked. And then we also have Bright Bites, a tool that people have used for surveying students. But the majority of our schools have actually been really diving into every single home, and they feel like the access to a device and access to good connection at home is actually a lot higher than maybe some statistics. So it's kudos to our schools for diving in and really identifying every single need for every single family.
As we did our first question with those, it was the Readiness Survey on a plan for digital learning in households without internet access. So we can give these kids a device, but if they don't have good internet service, and unfortunately, when Bernadette and I were doing research for this component, what we've learned that in Kentucky and in rural America, in rural Kentucky, that there is a digital divide between Kentuckians that have high-speed internet and those who don't. And yesterday, as I was driving, I was listening to a gentleman from Thacker Grigsby, who is an internet provider here in a lot of our homes and in this region. And so what he was talking about was the cost. And so we don't have that at Kentucky, and that's what he was talking about. Kentucky was ranked 40th out of 50 states for broadband access. And so with the cost and then just getting to people sometimes makes it a little difficult. On our survey, and this was what I heard some of you talking about, was that teachers would put assignments on Chromebooks that would be given to students, and then flash drives, that we would use flash drives so that students could have access to their instruction, and then those would be returned. We did talk a little bit about packets and then purchased curriculum. Some of the districts have said that they were going to purchase curriculums like Edgenuity. And then the Khajiits. And Bernadette, actually, we looked this up because we had no idea what Khajiits was, but it's a wireless provider operating on Verizon and Sprint wireless networks. And unfortunately, because a lot of our students and homes have Appalachian Wireless, it makes us a little bit difficult to get that on our telephones. So as we move forward then, we'll look at those and see what you all plan to do.
It looks like Nicole has joined us.
Okay.
So, Nicole, do you have anything to offer with this question? As a parent, has the district surveyed you, or do you know if they're doing any of these things to find out if they have the internet use, are able to actually use the internet at home, or if they have the personal devices?
As a parent, I have not received a phone call or any kind of survey about the internet or devices. I mean, they do that at the beginning of each year, but I haven't had anything happening this year. I've filled out a couple surveys, but they were more or less, is your child going to attend school? Are they going to work virtually? Just, you know, things of that nature, but it had nothing to do with the internet or devices.
Thank you, Nicole. Next question. Okay, so has your district, or will your district, make a commitment to provide a device for each student? And we'll start with Mr. Cochran and Mike, and then you others just pick up when you're ready. And also, let me just go ahead and say the number two question is, if so, what devices will your district make available to students, and why were they chosen? So just go ahead, Mr. Cochran.
Yeah, we're gonna make a commitment to try to get all students K through 12 a Chromebook. And the reason we chose the Chromebooks, that's what we already had in place, and we were able to get a few more. And we were 4 through 12. Now we will be K through 12, the whole district. And hopefully that will keep them up to date, and they'll know what's going on, whether we are in school or we're doing it virtually.
Was there a reason that you specifically chose the Chromebook?
We're a Google district, and everything just seemed to work seamless that way. And I think Mikey can talk a little bit more about it as well.
The cost for sure. Chromebooks are affordable. We couldn't have been one-to-one with probably any other device. And the fact that we are a G Suite district, and Chromebooks just mesh so well with Google Docs and the Gmail and our accounts. And that's why that's the main reason we chose Chromebooks. And if we can give those to every student, and every student have the same device, that'll help with any support issues we may have also.
So Chromebooks, they can be used offline also, is that right?
Yes, they do have a offline option where students that do not have internet, if they can get internet at some point, they could download, assignments from Google Drive to access later. They can complete those assignments whenever they get internet. It will upload automatically. They could download new assignments, or you could also use jump drives with the Chromebooks also.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Meadows?
At the high school in Magoffin, we are not one-to-one. Each year I have tried to purchase 2 to 4 sets or Chromebook carts with 30 each. So we're growing that. But at this point, we probably have about 300 Chromebooks at the high school for 600 students. So we're not one-to-one, but it is our plan to issue a Chromebook to any student that indicates that they need a device. And as I said earlier, we are looking at probably about 25% of our student body that would need a device. So we can meet that need. We have plans to scan barcodes on them, to track them, and to develop some type of a contract with the family to issue those. But that's all we have are Chromebooks, and I think that like everyone has already spoken, affordability, the fact that we're using Google district-wide, those have influenced that decision.
Okay. Courtney, Can you talk to us about any other districts that you're familiar with and kind of what they're using?
Chromebooks have really taken off, and just as Chris and Jeff and Mike said, it's because of the cost, but also because of the functionality. You know, they're so easy to use, and the kids really the learning curve is not much. But even for our districts that they may not be one-to-one, because of the recent funding with CARES and the GEARS money, and then really KVEC, you all, well, almost a decade ago started the one-to-one initiative, helping get this really jump-started in each of our in each of our districts in the region. So I feel like our schools have a little bit of a head start because of that, along with CATS money. I think districts are pulling together, and like what Chris said, even if you're not one-to-one, how are you finding those homes and reaching out and letting that have a loan problem, like a loan type of system, so that even for homes that do have a device, they may not need the district device, but if they don't have a device, they can check that out. So we do have schools that may not be one-to-one, but we are in very good position, I feel like, for the majority of our schools to be able to either loan them out or be one-to-one. And we've even seen some districts that have been 5th through 12th grade one-to-one, that because of this situation, they've dropped down to 3rd grade and even down to kindergarten. So a lot of people are using, if you have to find silver lining in something like this situation, they're definitely taking advantage of some of the federal and state money that's going to the schools to support expanding their one-to-one to make sure every child has a device at home.
That's great.
And now Nicole is in a good position. She's been working with us for probably about 10 years now, and worked with us whenever we got our grant for college and career readiness and did the WIN learning. And so she's worked in a lot of our districts. But I'd like to just ask her, as a parent, has Pike County, do they have a system where they give devices to students? You have 2 boys in the Pike County school system. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Honestly, I have no idea, because my kids have their own devices. So I honestly cannot answer that from anybody's point of view but mine. I know that they have Chromebooks in school. I know that for a fact, because they do a lot on Google Classroom. I'm not sure if it's entirely one-to-one yet, but we do have Gear Up. Let's see. Yeah, we have Gear Up, which are following the 8th and 9th graders this year. So they may be providing something like that I'm unaware of. I really don't know, because my kids have access.
We can start maybe with Chris on this one, or Mr. Meadows, I guess I should say. Does your district know the percentage of students with internet access at home? And I think you've kind of answered that already, because you did do this, you have gone and talked to them or had conversations with them and surveyed. But those considerations that are included are the cost, the provider, the connectivity, and the speed, and the number of users. So how did you think about all that, and how that you were going to manage it?
Okay, I can't say that we thought about all of that.
It's okay. It's a work in progress.
We did survey people about whether or not they had internet at home. So we have the answers to that. And like for the high school student body, we found that we had more than, it's greater than 90% of the student body have internet access. I can't speak to connectivity and speed and things like that because honestly, we did not think to drill that deep when we were talking with these people. I did have a couple of people though that asked about programs, or were there ways that they could receive assistance to receive Wi-Fi, and I did direct that to our youth service center director to reach out to try to find information on that, and we haven't really landed on anything good there yet. So if there's anyone on this today that has an idea or could direct me there, I would be interested in that.
Okay, Mr. Cochran and Mike.
Here in Johnson County, we had, through our online registration, that was one of our questions, was about the access to the internet. And as of right now, out of the ones that have registered, there's 97% of the students have access to internet, high-speed internet. And like Mr. Mendel said, we didn't drill down to see how fast or how many people was, how many people's in the home and that kind of stuff. So it would slow down the bandwidth or whatever. But we do have 97%.
That's great.
And I think, Bernadette, as school districts are looking at what we're talking about, because if, you know, depending on how you ask it, it's hard to talk to families about speed and bandwidth, you know, so, you know, I don't think that they've missed a mark there at all. I think as we get a handle on the type of funding that we have, the CARES money is also a revenue to possibly assist with hotspots or opening up, or, you know, just different ideas to help families. But I think the number one thing that a lot of districts are doing, they're partnering with their providers, and they're having that deep conversation of, these are the amount of families. You know, Chris, did you say there was 90 some percent of your kids had access to high-speed internet?
Yes.
Okay, and Johnson County, Jeff, yours was 97%?
Yes, 97% is what we.
So I think what we're finding is that there's a small amount of kids and a small amount of families. So how can we drill down and then reach out to those partners? And some of our districts, they've worked with their partners who have actually put together a really, really discounted rate with no data limits. And they've made it so that only that device that's in the home, or that's in the from the district issued device, is the only device that can connect. And what that is doing is that's allowing that family to have access at an affordable rate just for a small extended amount of time, maybe till December or January. And then they're actually going to reassess at that point, because nobody knows, you know, in the world we're in today, but the providers are reaching out to offer those for just the students in the district. So it's a great conversation, and it's awesome to have. We have great partners in our area, but to see them stepping up and supporting our districts. If you haven't had that conversation with your provider, I'm sure, you know, you can reach out to them or talk to your CIO, because those conversations are happening and they're stepping up. It's really nice to see. And then with the additional CARES funding, that's allocated in there if there's any type of support. Now, we don't want to get into where we're supporting, you know, we're paying for the internet. That's not the, you know, the whole point of schools, but helping provide that access just for this time we're going through. It's definitely something that the districts are doing.
Great.
Oh, I think that is great. And especially, and I'm not sure we were on a while ago, but just yesterday, whenever as I've told you, I was driving and I had printed that little piece off today, but it talks about education workforce leaders push to close Kentucky's digital divide. And so they identified 186,000 students in Kentucky do not have adequate devices at home, and they lack reliable high-speed internet. And I would venture to say, going on, and I'll not read you the entire article, it's something that you could look up, but the majority of those were in rural areas. And so what they were talking about on that was that unless we step up and have high-speed internet for our kids in rural areas, then they're going to fall further and further behind. And so, you know, more so than the urban and suburban students. And so, you know, I think that this is a great conversation, because it's not something that we deal with every day. And whenever we think about the internet, we think that if we have a phone at home where we can log in, then we have the internet. But I live in Hyden, Kentucky, in Leslie County, and live right in the city limits. And whenever you know, have grandchildren there and everybody's trying to do something, and you know, you can't watch a Netflix, it'll just sit there and spin. And so I think this is a great conversation, and hopefully it can get people to talking within our communities and ask for support from these providers to where that they will do that, because I'm sure that people that live close to the Harlan County line that's still in Leslie County, it'd be difficult for them to have internet access up on Marbone, Kentucky. So this is great. And you know, people get frustrated. And this is something that Nicole will remember when we first started using Win Learning, and teachers right there in Pikeville, Pikeville Independent, would try to get a whole group of kids on that platform, on the Win Learning platform, and they couldn't log in or get kicked out. It's frustrating, not only for the students, but for the teachers as well. And so as we, but there's ways around that, and it just took us a little while to work together to get that done. So having these conversations right now gives us time to get prepared before September, when the majority of our schools are going to be returning with students.
I think that's a great point, because it's working together. You know, it's knowing, think about the teacher that's going to be online, and they're going to recognize that, you know, maybe this student, there's something going on because they're having difficulty logging on, and, you know, they can reach out. You know, we always talk about knowing our families, having that, you know, that bond with our community. And, you know, this has made us stronger. It's going to make us dive in. And you know, and I appreciate people that put together numbers and stuff, but when you look at our districts and how much they have closed that gap on devices because they have put money, KVEC, you know, I mean, you know, I want to re-educate them and tell them, hey, you know, we have more devices. And now the conversation is making sure that connectivity, you know, and there's a long way to go, but we've done so much to get to this point. It's a great day to be in Kentucky because of the efforts leading up to this point.
I agree, totally.
Now, we also, we talked about plans then on what we're going to do to learn remotely without internet, but our survey that we did, our Readiness Survey, also talked about what to do if there were not devices. And so we had mainly two questions, or got responses that encourage face-to-face learning and then provide Chromebooks and devices. And I think that's what you all have said. But do any of you have anything else to add? I know, Courtney, you've been out around the region. Do you know of any other plans beyond those two?
I think that when we look at households without a device, I really don't think that we are going to have as much of a gap as we think. Like, I really believe that right now our districts, and I know Mike and Jeff and Chris may be able to speak to this, and they've already spoken a little bit, that, you know, with the money, with CARES and GEARS and with KETS and with what KVEC, I just, even if you just check them out, like, I don't know if having a device will really be a concern for many of our districts. I think we've done a great job, outstanding job. So I don't think without a device, I don't know. I think that as a region, we are ready for the next question, like the next level. You know what I mean? Well, guys, what do you all think?
Yeah, I agree. I think our district was actually pretty shocked at the number of students that didn't have internet access. We've always shot that number way up. We've always thought it was a lot more than the 3% we're seeing now. So I don't think it is as big as a problem, but with that low number, I think it'll be a lot easier to resolve and focus on.
Chris, you have anything to add?
Really, I'm just in agreement with Johnson County there. I was surprised at the number of those that had internet access and the actual number of people that indicated they had a device other than a phone. I expected both of those to be lower, and I'm just happy that even though we're not one-to-one, that we can meet the need of those that don't have a device.
I agree. I was kind of shocked at those numbers also, because I think we've always thought more didn't have internet and have the devices, so I was pleasantly surprised that they did have it.
And I think a lot we just assume, we just assume, I mean, I'm from Phelps and it's a very small town and, people make assumptions, but, when you ask and drill in and ask that question and even dig a little bit, we were talking, CIOs, we get in the weeds a little bit and we talk about stuff that, people kind of like, but when you ask the question, do you stream Netflix at home? People understand that. And so it's asking the question in a way that we can truly get to know what students have. And I think that's what's been so surprising is we've just assumed when people say broadband or, parents may not know what you're talking about. But when you drill down, we're finding out, that we may be in a better positioning for this than even we thought.
There again, it's the language, sometimes you have to speak in a way that they understand what it is because, many of us don't know that much about the deep technology stuff.
And I'll just bring this is something to think about as well, something that happened in the spring when teachers were reaching out to their students. And this was a high school student, but he had made contact, how teachers were calling their students weekly. And then the teacher said that he hadn't been able to get a hold of a young man. And it went on for some time, and then finally he did. But the young man said that he lived with his grandparents, and they had a plan where they only were allocated so many minutes per month for internet access. And so I wonder, has anybody done any kind of surveys with their kids to learn about that type of plan? And I don't know as much about that type of a plan as, I do know that my granddaughter, we were going to Tennessee and we're driving down the internet and she said, Mama, I need to get on this game. And I said, well, just use my hotspot here on my phone. Well, that was on a Friday evening, and on Sunday, I had an email from Appalachian Wireless saying, you're about to go over your rate plan. I said, halt right there. So, but what about that type of thing? I had to go over there and have them and talk to the Appalachian Wireless people, because if you go over those minutes, you're going to be charged a big fee. And that was just letting her, and she's 9 years old, but playing those games, using that type of stuff. So how does that impact internet access at homes? Does anybody know?
So whenever we did our survey, that was something that we did address in that question, was internet access not being cellular data. If you're relying on a cell phone, then no, you do not have broadband internet, and we won't. That's just, it wouldn't suffice what we're asking for in that survey question. So the 3% may be those that just have cell phones.
Again, asking the right question in a relatable way, kudos. And as we dig in, that's what's awesome about this design lab, as people put strategies like that together that Johnson just shared, to asking the right question and digging in and really getting to know those homes and who needs the service and how we can help. We talk about all the time that connectivity is now becoming like a utility. It's like, water. And I think that's why we see the higher rates, but it's nowhere near 100%. So a good job, Johnson. I love that you were able to dig in and ask the question and have your data be a little more spot on. Something for all of us to learn, because when I took that survey, I really appreciated you asking that question.
Well, and that was one of the things that they were talking about yesterday on the piece that I listened to, that having high quality internet service and high speed, it was no longer a luxury, but it was a necessity if, you know, if we're going to survive in this world.
We also, on our survey, received some additional comments concerning access at home, and they talked about the bandwidth at school with several students online during the day without classes. And one of the concerns that some people had were, would it slow down everything and cause frustrations? Or at home, if you had 3 or 4 kids on it using a Chromebook, and then the teacher was, maybe they had a parent there that was working from home, and was that going to be a problem? So can you all speak to any of that?
And let me ask Nicole about this one, because she does work for Win Learning. And Nicole, where do you live at there in Pike County?
I live way up in a holler. Actually, it's Stone, Kentucky, so near the Belfry area, but I'm about probably 15 minutes away from there. I do work from home, and I have to have high-speed internet just for my job alone. But I found that during the spring, when the schools went to what is that called? Non-instructional days, that both of my children, and say that both of my children also needed to be on the internet at the same time I did. So I actually ended up, I had to buy a much larger package to be able to run everybody being on the internet at the same time. Especially with theirs, because it was videos and so forth, and then mine because I'm on webinars and Zoom and things like that. So I did have to jump up to 2 terabytes is what I have now. I only have one option where I live. We don't have multiple options to choose from, and it's very expensive. It's about $200 a month for the 2 terabytes. Which gives me the speed that I need, not necessarily the amount, but I had to have the speed to make sure everything worked properly.
And so I think that was one of the what the teachers were talking about with that first question about the bandwidth at school. And many of you who have been to our KVEC meetings have heard David Couch speak about, because when the superintendents and people would voice concerns about the bandwidth at school, and David would say, well, you know, you need to check your teachers who are in there looking at YouTube videos, you know, during the day and that kind of stuff. And so that can cause slowdowns at school. And so I think that this was what, and I don't know how many, it just depends on, like Louisville, where they're going back to, you know, virtual right from the get-go. But I mean, they don't have as much problem as what we would here in rural Kentucky, I wouldn't think. Now, I don't know that because I'm not there, but any of our schools that are going to go back virtual right from the get-go, you know, dependent, is that something that you all will have conversations with your teachers about the videos that they're streaming and, you know, who's doing that? So in high schools, if you've got 30 teachers or you know, or more who are all on there at one time, could that cause problems with internet service at school? If your teachers, many people have already said that they're going to have the teachers come back and be in their classrooms. So if that's the case and they're all working, your teachers are working from school to reach out to and provide instruction for their students, could that be an issue? And that's probably a good one for Mike.
Yeah, I feel fairly fairly confident that all the work that KDE and CATS has done in the background, that every district will have suffice bandwidth to handle this. I think they have prepared the districts, and that's not very high on my radar that we will have issues with bandwidth as far as at school. I think KDE and CATS has done a great job at already solving that problem for the districts.
I'd like to share an experience from yesterday that refutes that. Kim and I were doing a training with Jenkins teachers for integrating social studies and reading and writing. And they had them in the buildings in their classrooms with masks. All of them were on with us. And we had sufficient bandwidth until about 1 o'clock, and their server crashed. So that's why we are just now joining this morning, because they did get the internet back up, and we finished our training this morning. So some districts need to really try that out and think about what would happen if they had all teachers in the building on the internet with their server at the same time.
I know that, and I know, were they wireless or was it hardwired by any chance? Because I know we're, again, all this, you know, it was good conversation, and it's just starting to educate everybody on the best way. But I'm curious if they were all in 1 or 2 rooms using the access points like the wireless, or if they were hardwired, because this is part of the conversation that CIOs and ed tech leaders and people that, you know, Mike and Jeff will be having to talk to teachers to tell them that, and I got to give a shout out to Phil Coleman. He's the director of our technology school services, who has pushed for, before COVID, that the upload speeds is the same as the download speeds for our schools. The key, what we're kind of telling people to encourage them in their classrooms to do, is if they're going to video and stream, is to do that from being hardwired. So I'm curious, was it wireless or hardwired?
I have no clue about that, Courtney.
Okay, that's okay.
You would need to talk to the district. All I know is it happened.
Yeah, no. But this is great learning.
Yeah, I'm glad it happened with us instead of had they had students on. So it's about being proactive to maybe try that out before you go in and get everybody on, to see how your particular server or whatever, like you're saying, hardwired, wireless. Because what we had some in individual rooms, and then we would have maybe one classroom would have 3 teachers that were socially distanced with only one laptop going or their desktop. But then we had individuals throughout the building. And like I said, they had perfect bandwidth. Everything was fine. We started at 8:30 that morning. We broke for lunch. And when we came back, we had less than an hour with them before their internet crashed.
Did you say that you were in Jenkins?
No, we were here at KVEC doing an online training with them, but they were in their classrooms at Jenkins.
Okay, that was another issue. Yes, that was a whole nother issue. Okay. I was like, what are we talking about? That's my district.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Whole nother issue.
No, we were here at KVEC out in the Holler Broadcasting studio working with them, and Kim and I had it had gone pretty well. Yeah. From their end.
Yeah, they had an issue there on side.
We worked out because of Microsoft and that, but we worked all that out.
But what's great though is what you brought up though, that this being a design lab, when districts get together and they talk about, are they going to be streaming and will their device be hardwired? That's why this is so critical for you to share, for Chris and Mike and parent voice. I mean, I love Nicole. We've worked together for years, because nothing's perfect, but all we can do is get better. And I love that. And I know there's not much time. Bernadette, was there something else? Was there another question you had?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Other than Desi's going to talk about some resources, unless you all have something else to add.
Well, there's one more after this one, but this question, the other question, that would be more for the internet provider, and we've talked about that. But there was another question that I had from a teacher, and she's actually a former student of mine, but she teaches in Leslie County, and she has elementary, and she has 3 children. And so, and her concern was that teachers using the internet at home, if they close like we did last March. And so if she's trying to work remotely with her classroom of kids and needing the internet to connect for that, and then her 3 children, she has 1 in elementary and 2 in high school. And so that was her question about the broadband. And so I think that what this does, is just it gives us an opportunity with this design lab to talk about these things and put them out and to get prepared. And I go back to what with Kim, and she had shared that quote that, we were in crisis teaching last spring, but starting right now, we have an opportunity to prepare for distance learning with purpose and intent. And so what Carol just shared and these kinds of questions, then that allows us to get prepared and all come together and work together, because some of our districts and our regions are a little bit more rural than what others are and don't have access to some providers and those types of things. So we're going to have to figure out how to come together and work to support everyone in our region. So this gives us that opportunity. So we put up this sample resource page, and the first one that you see, and what really made everything, brought it back to us and how different our communities are from the broadbandnow.com. And that's the same report that spoke about Kentucky being number 40 in states for broadband. And also on this one, you can put in your zip code. You can go to broadbandnow.com and you can put in your zip code, and it will give you a really great report looking at the number of providers that's in your area, the cost of these different packages of internet service, the speed, and it was very interesting. So that's really a good resource that that you all could have in these districts if you put in where your students come from, what area, because I know even over there in Leslie County, my zip code 41749, but 10 miles up the road where Stennett's at, or 5 miles up the road where Hoskinton is at, they have different zip codes. And so everybody can put in their own zip code and find out where they stand as far as internet service. And then all of this is going to be housed at the Holler. One of the sites that KDE put out with these 4 areas, and I think Jeff had put those up on the earlier slide, and you'll be able to find that, but on the Holler, but is that Google site for the NTI Awesome digital resources, and there's lots of great information on that. So what we want to do is to continue populating this site with resources for teachers and for parents and community members. And so I think that somebody said a while ago to send whatever resources that you've got. And then Courtney had shared these sample resources for district reopening sites, and we put that up there just as a resource so that people can learn what some of our districts are doing.
And I just think it's always good for us to have conversations and to learn from each other, because what I might not think of, you might. So we want you to continue with us on this and help us to populate this, and tell your friends about it to, share what they're doing also.
And we have about about 5 minutes left for our time. And so does anyone have any questions or comments or anything that we can share together and learn from?
I have one topic that I would like Jeff and Mike to talk about. I know, sorry guys. A lot of parents may have some concern about having a device at home, and the state has provided Relay. It's a filtering, and I know that some districts are rolling that out right now, and hopefully that will all be available. It is available right now, but it's free for our districts. So do you all want to talk about that and what that is, just in case someone had some, there's this device and my child's, has it. You care to share?
Yeah, so thank you, KDE, for Relay. It's been on my radar for quite some time, but we haven't been able to get it because of the cost. But now that you guys have offered it, it has been a life changer for some of those concerns that parents may have. And what Relay does is it will filter school-owned devices, district devices, at home as if they were sitting in your classroom. So the safety of those students and reporting, and we can cover everything. It was an easy rollout, and it will help with students staying on topic and having those resources they need.
Awesome, thank you. I just know that sometimes parents ask the filtering, and we just, that's something available.
Yeah, that's a concern, I'm sure.
And so, Nicole, before we end, I'm going to put you on the spot for just a minute, but from a parent point of view, what would you like to see districts, what kind of surveys or what kind of communication would you like to see from districts that would help you as a parent and your two boys, as well as all these other children?
Well, I'm looking forward to going and looking at that reopening plan they just put up there. It's just, everything is just up in the air right now. I'm not sure, and I'm sure all the parents feel this way. We just don't know what's happening for sure. We keep waiting and waiting to see if the other shoe is going to drop. Are we going to go to full online, or are we going to do the in-school or virtual? I just don't know. And I mean, honestly, as a parent, I haven't even went out and bought school clothes or anything because I am waiting to see what's going to happen. When I heard that Louisville was going, Jefferson County was doing full online till December, I'm kind of waiting to see if everybody's going to follow suit with that. I really don't know. It's just very confusing for parents right now. Everything is still up in the air. Me personally, I'm sending mine to school. They can go. But some parents, I'm sure, are not going to feel the same way I do, and they want to keep theirs at home. So it's just, and the only thing that scares me about being at home, especially with the little kids, is it's hard enough to keep their attention in the classroom. But you're going to have them, I mean, I know we don't have many options, but we're going to have them at home trying to teach the little kids, and they need the socialization, and it's just a mess. And I'm just waiting to see how everything pans out at this time.
Well, thank you. I think that that's a good point. There's communication. That's key to really for parents and community members in general, but it's communication. And that's one of the great things that we can learn. So thank you. And I think that we have 2 minutes left. Any other questions or concerns? Or I really feel for people who are having to go back remotely right from the get-go, because you don't know your students and you're not going to have that opportunity to meet them and to get to know them. And some of my former students who are teachers of kindergartners talk about just the difficulty in that. So it's really, really going to be a difficult task as we start back, especially if it's having to be done remotely. I hope that everybody could come back at least during that first week so that you can lay eyeballs on your students. So that's, you know, obviously that's going to help a little bit, but it's going to be really difficult. So anything that we can do, any kind of resources that we can have to help our schools, our parents, the communities to come together to really make this a good opportunity to move forward, then that's what we want to do. So Bernadette put up the slide here and you'll see it, our Digital Learning Design Lab initiative. And if you log on to the Holler, we will be having more resources put on there.